Okay, hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parsha Korach 5785. It is a short Parsha with a major machloket, a major fight between somebody by the name of Korach, whom we're going to learn quite a bit about today, and Moshe. And I think today, if nobody minds, although there are other things in the parsha besides the machloket and the aftermath of the machloket. There's also uh, the issue, the continuing sort of doubt that the Jewish people have, and the plague that they're hit with, and the gifts that they are then entrusted to give to Kohanim and Leviim. That's in this week's parsha, and the famous incident um, of Aaron's staff sprouting almonds. All of that's in the parsha. We've talked about a lot of that in previous years. Today, if you don't mind, I'd like to focus on the beginning, the very first few verses of the parsha. It just has a lot to help us understand um, uh, what happened there with Korach, and of course, that's supposed to help us understand our lives as well as the Torah is designed to do. So, with no further ado, let's go into the source sheet from Sefaria here, and let's hope I did it right this time, not like last week. Okay, so the first verse in the parsha, famously, it says, "V'yikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahat ben Levi v'Datan v'Aviram b'nei Eliav v'On ben Pelet b'nei Ruvain." So Korach took, and it doesn't say exactly what he took. We spoke about that in previous years. He took his imagination, his hopes, his dreams. He took himself. There's all kinds of interpretations of what it is he took, but he is identified as the son of Yitzhar, who is the son of Kahat, who, as we should know by now, is the son of Levi. Yitzhar might not be a very famous name, but Kahat should be. We, in the beginning of Parshat Bamidbar, we counted Bnei Kahat, right? And we counted they're one of the three groups of Levium. So Kahat, Gershon, and Merari were the three brothers, three sons of Levi. So we should know Kahat, from that. Datan and Aviram, famously from different Rashis, different Chazal, we learned that Datan and Aviram had many problems with Moshe's leadership throughout the sojourn in the Midbar. And so that shouldn't be a big surprise that they're involved here also. But along with them was we find out that they're the sons of Eliav, that was their father's name, and this gentleman by the name of On ben Pelet, who pretty much disappears after this verse. The understanding of the rabbis is that he was saved by his wife. We've spoken about that in previous years. Great story there. And Bnei Ruvain, and the sons of Ruvain. So we have a number of people who came up to argue against Moshe. Now, Rashi has an interesting comment here, and it's going to be interesting. I think what I found after looking over what I have in my notes for today's class is I noticed that a lot of what we're going to learn is basically commentary on Rashi. So Rashi is considered like the father of Mefarshim, the greatest commentary of all. He was a posek, a rav, and a teacher, and a winemaker in France, about 1,000 years ago. And his grandsons are the beginnings of Tosfot. It's quite a significant connection to our Masorah. Besides the fact that also he had a lot of descendants, and he was from the tribe of Yehuda. So people who can trace their lineage to Rashi can trace their lineage back to Hillel, because Rashi is descended from Hillel, and therefore can actually trace their lineage all the way back David HaMelech. So he's our connection to our tradition in a lot of ways. Aside from the fact focus as much on Rashi as we will today, but I think there's perhaps a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidence, but I think there's a connection because in a sense, the Parsha of Korach is really all about defending Moshe's defense of the Masorah, his defense of his prophecy from Hashem, and defending it against people who had selfish desires to try to get their own way. Korach in that case, and the different people that Rashi's commentary is meant to contradict in a way as well. So anyway, so Rashi comments on this verse, Vikach Korach, and he says an interesting thing. He doesn't usually say this. He says, Parsha zo Yafa Nidreshet b'Midrash Rabbi Tanchuma. This parsha is well explained in the Midrash of Rabbi Tanchuma. In other words, what we call the Tanchuma, which is a book of Midrash. So the Midrash, he says, explains this well. He doesn't go into detail, doesn't tell us how it's explained well. He just says it is explained well. And not totally related to the parsha, but on this phrase itself, the Divrei David has a problem. Divrei David was written by the Taz, Turi Zahav, who is one of the great commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, living in the years in the mid 1600s. He actually died at a pretty old age in his 80s, but he survived the Khmelnytsky pogroms. It's called Tach V'Tat in Hebrew, and he's one of the three. He's one of the two major kelim, as we call them, explainers of the Shulchan Aruch. Him along with his father-in-law, the Bach, but him alongside the Shach, the Siftei Kohen, is the other major commentary. He died quite a bit younger, but they lived around the same time. Anyway, so he wrote a perush, an explanation on Rashi called Divrei David, and he writes there, Parsha zu Yafa Nidrashet. So he quotes Rashi as saying that this parsha is well explained. It's a nice explanation, Yafeh, right? Yafeh. It's explained well in this midrash, and he says L'chora kasha. I have a big question on this. Sheyesh isur b'lashon zeh. We can't speak like this. Sharei, according to Chazal, she'asur lomar halacha zu na'eh, halacha zu einana. You can't speak. I like this halacha. I don't like this halacha. You can't speak like that about Torah. That's not, the Torah is Hashem's communication with us. We can't be judgmental or discriminatory about Torah. Oh, I like this verse. This is a nice verse. We're not supposed to speak like that. So here Rashi is saying this is explained well. As he likes the Torah of the Tanchuma on this. He didn't say that about Shlach last week. He's not going to, I can tell you this much, he's not going to say this about Hukat or Balak next week. And so what's the deal? Why does Rashi speak like that here is what the Divrei David wants to know. Yeah, so Ein Lomar de Davka Tarvahu Yesh Isur Lomar. It says the halacha zu einana lechud yesh isur ela imkein haktzat b'shem kishem she'asur lomar halacha zu einana kach asur lomar halacha zuna. Just like you can't say it's not that you can't like some halachot and dislike other ones. That's not the problem. The problem is you can't speak that way. By saying that, chas v'shalom, you're implying that you don't like other halachot. You can't say that you like a halacha. V'imkein lama amar Rashi parsha zu, etc. So why does Rashi say it here? Yesh lomar degam kan yesh miut shebishar mekomot yesh bet derachim. So there's two ways to understand this. Ha'echad, first is lefi pshuto, according to the simple explanation. V'ha'sheni lefi hamidrash. In every verse, you can explain the simple way, and you can explain the midrashic way. Aval kan, ein kan ela derech echad. You only have one way to explain it. The midrash hu pshuto, because the midrash itself is the pashut pshat. The midrash is the simple explanation. Whereas usually you can come up with all kinds of a simple explanation versus some sort of ethical explanation, mystical explanation. One moment. Mystical explanation, all kinds of different explanations for all sorts of verses. This parsha, the story of Korach, does not make sense in its simple explanation. How could a wise person, Korach, who as we'll find out later was considered wise, how could he, after seeing H-Shem, after getting the 10 Commandments, after seeing all the punishments, himself being a Levi, the Levim always standing up for Moshe and always doing the right thing, how could he do this? It's beyond the pale. It does not make sense in its simple explanation. So what Rashi is saying, not that this Midrash explains it so nicely. The Midrash is the only way to understand it. You can't understand it in the simple explanation. You read it in English, it won't make sense. You need to see the commentary. So that's what Rashi is saying, according to the Divrei David. Inkam pshuto rak midrash hu yafe nidrash. The pshut here does not make sense. You need the midrash, and that's what he's saying. That's why Rashi is allowed to say here that indeed this midrash is nice. In other words, it explains it in the only way to explain it. It's the simple explanation doesn't cut it. All right, but that's not the only Rashi on this verse. The third Rashi on this verse, we're skipping the second one for today. I think we might have dealt with it in previous years. Go to our channel, subscribe, whatever. Okay, all right. you know what to do. All right. So, but Rashi's famous comment on this verse is Ben Yitzhar ben Kahat ben Levi, that it traces Korach's lineage all the way up to Levi, and it says V'lo Hiskir ben Yaakov, but it doesn't mention ben Yaakov. Levi is the son of Yaakov. Why stop at Levi? Right? And so says Rashi, he stopped at Levi, he didn't mention Yaakov. Shebikesh rachamim al atzmo. Yaakov davened for rachamim, he davened for mercy. Shelo yizachir shemo al machlokotam. He didn't want his name to be connected or mentioned together with this argument. He didn't want to be mixed up in this. So he begged Hashem, he asked Hashem. Shenamar, as a verse says, this is at the end of Bereshit, when Yaakov is blessing his sons, Shenamar, bik halam al techad kvodi. Do not place my kavod, my honor, in their kihila, in their group, right? And there he's talking about he's talking about the blessing he gave to Shimon and Levi. He says, I don't want to be involved in their machloket. Which machloket? The one of Levi. This one, right? The Heicha Nizka Shemo al Korach. Sorry, give me a sec. And so where is, he says, where is the connection of Yaakov with Korach? So why would you think maybe you should mention his name? There's a Shenamar that says in Divrei Hayamim, ben of Yasaf, ben Korach, ben Yitzhar, ben Khat, ben Levi, ben Yisrael. It can say that. It can have the entire lineage of Korach all the way back to Yaakov. Interestingly, not Yitzchak, not Avraham, not Terach. How far back you want to go. So we do have this idea that in Divrei Hayamim, at least, that Korach's name can be mentioned together with Yaakov's. So it's a little bit of a wonder, says Rashi, that his name, Yaakov's name, isn't mentioned here when we're talking about the machloket. And the reason is because Yaakov begged for that in his blessing of his children. He asked Hashem not to be mentioned in this machloket between Korach and Moshe. Beautiful. Except for one thing. Everybody's wondering why Rashi asks that question. But what is also an interesting point is, why mention these people at all? Why mention any of these guys? Now, usually we might have one generation. Normally we have one generation, in other words, the father. Sometimes we have two generations, the grandfather. But here we have the great-grandfather. It goes all the way back from Yitzhar to Levi. What's Levi got to do with anything? So you might want to say, because we should know, that from Kahat, that there was his Kahat's father was Levi, as if we might have forgotten it. Maybe, but that's not usually how the Torah works. In other words, the Torah seemingly needed to mention all of these people, and we can find out why by looking at the Nachal Kedumim, the commentary of the Chidah. Chayiv Yosef David Azulai. V'yikach Korach, Efshar Shemer Razal, according to the rabbis, Amar Korach Ani Ben Yitzchak, the Shamin Tzaf Lamala Al Kol. So I'm the descendant of Yitzhak, and I should have had, as Yitzhar's son, I should have been the one chosen to lead, and not Aaron. That seems to be his argument. That's actually the next Rashi, which again we're sort of leaving out here. Is it the next Rashi? No, it was I guess it was the previous Rashi. Or no. Anyway, it's we see that he is that Korach is interested in this position of power that Aaron has, and his explanation to why he deserves it seems to be because he is the firstborn. Oh, but wait a minute. Aval lo Rashahu ben Kahat Yikush Shina v'Shene Moladav ben Levi Ayah lo Levia begehenam Kemosh Amru Razal Perak Chelek v'Zeh Ta'ut Kful the Ikra Mad biyado Yikach im Aviv hu Shamen v'Hein lo Yeh Hayesh Lomar Lirod ben Kahat Shiyiku Shinav. So his explanation, according to the Gemara, is that he deserved this power, he deserved this level of leadership because he's the firstborn. However, he made a mistake. And what's the mistake? Inami ba hatana b'mashe zal, what it says in the rabbis, the Amram ha-bechor, right? Not Lubeit Banav. Amram had two sons, and Banav Gedola. The first one, the oldest one is Aaron, but who took the greatness? That would be Moshe. V'im Kain hanesiut haya rui lo shehu ben Yitzhar. So according to his understanding, he thought that the Levia, that the Kohen, should go to the son of Yitzhar, but that's a big mistake. V'tach mirot einav, he should have looked with his eyes. Shehu ben Kahat, he's the son of Kahat. So what? Mituune ha'aron, they are the people who carried the Aron. V'gershon ha'bechor, but Gershon was the Bechor. So why does Kehat have to do with his level of leadership, his level of power? Kehat only had his power sort of as the younger brother of Gershon. Gershon's the Bechor. Right? The Gershon HaBechor lo haya lo ra ben Levi shelevi nikdash Reuven v'Shimon lo nitkashlu. And Gershon himself is the son of Levi, and Levi wasn't the firstborn. That he became the Levi. That he became the priest of the family. Now it never has something to do with being a firstborn. Not Levi, right? Now there's the ones who are being mentioned here. The ones who are being mentioned here, Levi wasn't the firstborn and to have the power that he had. And Gershon wasn't a firstborn. Was a firstborn. So Kahat shouldn't have had the power that he had, and etc. It goes all the way back. So it's not. It has nothing to do with being a firstborn. So if it has nothing to do with being a firstborn, so what's he complaining about? Why is he saying, "Oh, I'm the son of the firstborn, so I should be first"? So that's why the pasuk mentions all of this lineage to show he is in line with people who were in power who didn't get the power because they were firstborn. None of them were the firstborns. Even, and this is the important part, this is why Rashi actually comes up with this question. Why is Rashi even mentioned? Why would we even think that Yaakov should be mentioned? Besides the verse in Divrei Hayamim, as Rashi brings, Zu tochacha megula ki Yaakov biyado yitbarach leman the yitzvei v'yitanini v'tinina kol deracha mishpatim yisharim. Hashem is in charge, and Hashem makes judgments that are straightforward and correct. So he did the wrong thing. And even like I was saying, Yaakov could have been mentioned as another person who had who had the first who got the firstborn rights and wasn't the firstborn. So it has nothing to do with being a firstborn. And if that's what we're doing, if we're listening all the way back to that, then indeed Yaakov could have been mentioned, but he's not mentioned for the reason that Rashi brings, because Yaakov asked not to be mentioned. Okay, so all of that on the first verse of our parsha. Let's continue. So they came and they argued and they brought Moshe down to his knees. V'yishma Moshe v'yipol al panav. Moshe heard and he fell on his face. Rashi explains, because we don't know what this means. Does this mean he fell, he tripped on something? Does it mean this is how he talks to Hashem on talking to the floor? What's going on? What does this mean? So V'yipol al panav, says Rashi, mipnei hamachloket. He fell on his face because of the machloket. Shekvar zeh biyadam sirchon rivi. This is already the fourth bad thing that the Jewish people did. And Rashi gives a list, right? Chatu be'egel, they sinned with the golden calf. V'yachal Moshe, and Moshe pleaded for them. Mitonanim, the people who were hungry for meat. V'yipalal Moshe, and Moshe prayed. Hameraglim, the spies. V'yomer Moshe el Hashem. V'sha'amu Mitzrayim. Again, Moshe prayed for them the third time. This is already now the fourth time. Machlakato shel Korach, this fourth problem. Nitrashlu yadav. Moshe's hands became weak. He couldn't hold himself up. He wasn't able to pray anymore. Mashal Leven Melech. This is comparable to a son of a king. Shesarach al Aviv, he upsets his father. Fies alav ohava, but he has defenders, he has friends who placate, who make his father feel better about him. Pam, ushtaim, ushalosh, one time, two times, three times, four time. Once the fourth time comes, it's four times and you're out in this ball game, right? Nitrashlu Yidei Ha'ohev Hahu. His friend didn't have the ability to fight for him anymore. What else? He has nothing left to say. Amar, so he said, Ad mat hayatriach al hamelech. How long can I keep bothering the king? If I ask the king for more mercy on his son at this point, he's just not going to grant it. He might be upset altogether and might do worse. Shema lo yikabel od mimeni. He will probably not listen to me anymore. So that's Rashi there, also from Tanchuma. That good explanation that we now, like I said, route, 4 strikes, you can't get that point. And Yidushe Hagriz is a little confused because who said? Where do you get the idea? Where's the number? Where's the magic number 4 pop up that if you ask 4 times, Hashem's not going to listen to anymore? Barashi Shekvar Zeh Ravi. This 4th argument, he says, "Yesh la'ayin madua dafka b'pam haravit nitrashlu yadav." Why is it the 4th time that your hands become weak? And he says, you know where you see this? Nira a'apam mashakatuv harambam. The Rambam writes, "Bepera gidden behilchot teshuva halacha hey." So 3:5 in Hilchot Tshuva. You have the text here in the source sheet if you want to look it up later. It says there that a person is always forgiven when they do Tshuva. Aval hatzibur, but the congregation, tolu lahem avon rishon sheni ushlishi. The 1st, 2nd, and 3rd sin that a congregation does, that a community does, can be forgiven. Shenamar, he brings a pasuk. Machshavin lahem ad. I don't know what ad ayin dalad zayin is. Ad dezeh maybe. Machshavin lahem haravi ve'elach. Ad kan l'shem. So they are punished from the 4th one and onward. Moshe Rabbeinu, olav shalom, right? Nitragshu yadav shal Moshe dafka b'sirchon haravi, and that's why it's specifically the 4th time that we can no longer be forgiven. He can no longer ask for forgiveness. The ad az, there we go. That's what it means. Ad az tolin hatzibur. That's when the congregation is now no longer able to be forgiven. Rak mechachet haravi metchilin l'chashiv. You have to start all over again. You get tshuva for the 4th sin as a separate kapara. Ayin Sham Rambam Ravad. So the Ravad argues regularly with the Rambam, and he has what to say here about his calculations about how we get to the number 4. But it's definitely worth taking a look. The Rambam's proofs are all from Tanakh, from Iyov, from Amos. Of course, Rambam is paraphrasing a Gemara. The Gemara in Yoma talks about this as well. Okay. So what do we have? We have Korach starts his machloket. It's a very personal thing for him. He wants power. He wants glory. He thinks he deserves it. We've shown you why he does not deserve it. It has nothing to do with being a firstborn. And even if he's the firstborn, the son of a firstborn, it doesn't matter. His father's father was not a firstborn. Kahat was not a firstborn, and Levi was not a firstborn, and Yaakov was not a firstborn. So being firstborn is definitely not everything. Seems to be a pattern. It's interesting. We could go even a little bit further. We could say that Yaakov's father wasn't wasn't the firstborn in a sense. Yitzchak was a son of was the firstborn for Avraham and Sarah, but before that, Avraham had Yishmael, etc. All right, also worth discussion maybe another time. Okay, next verse and next Rashi, as promised. We have Bamidbar 16:7. So this is right after Korach brought up the machloket. Moshe doesn't know what to do. He can't pray for them anymore because this is the fourth time. So it says Hashem tells Moshe tells Korach. Sorry, Moshe tells Korach that they're going to create a test. Never mind. Um, okay. So they're going to create a test. Let's nubahem. So this is chapter 16, verse 7. We're only in chapter 16 today, so it's easy to remember. Let's nubahem eish. V'sima alehem ketoret lifnei Hashem. Machar v'haya ha'ish asher yivchar Hashem hu hakadosh rav lachem b'nei Levi. So the test is they're going to take fire pans. They're going to put a fire in it. They're going to burn incense, ketoret, and that's going to prove who deserves to be the Kohen, who deserves to be the Levi, otherwise known as Kohen. And 250 men from the tribe of Reuven are involved, and Aaron as well. So on that verse, Rashi says, Rashi says, Rav Lachem B'nai Levi. We've dealt with this verse in the past. We've talked about from Sichot Musar about why Moshe is considered to have done the wrong thing by speaking like this to Korach. But that's not for now. That's as I said before, you can look in previous videos for that. So Rav Lachem B'nai Levi, you've taken on too much, you son of Levi. He himself is the son of Levi. Davar Gadol Amarti Lachem. I have told you a great thing. Velo tipshim hayu. And you're being ridiculous. You're being a tipesh. You're being a fool. Shekach hatra behem, and this is what Moshe said for hatra to hitra to warn them. Eloheim chatu al nafshotam, but they sinned against their souls anyway. Shnei amar, as it says. Chapter 17, verse 3, it says, Et machtot chataim ha'ele b'nafshotam. So they took the fire pans of the people who sinned against themselves, right? So they're hurting themselves. And says Rashi, this is a famous piece right here, V'korach shepikeach haya, and Korach, who's supposed to be a wise person, not a tipesh, Maral ishtut zeh. What kind of shtus? What kind of foolishness did he see that made him do this? Eino hitatu Rash shall shelet gedola yatzam. He saw that a great chain would come from him. Shmuel sheshakul kedeged Moshe v'Aaron. That the Shmuel will be equal to, in some ways, the prophecy of Moshe and Aaron combined. Amar bishvilo ani nimlat. So, based on that, he thought that he would escape any kind of punishment. That he'd have this great son, great grandson, whatever. He didn't know what generation it would be, and that would be the and that would be his and that would be his saving grace. That there would be 24 watches, 24 groups of Levim doing their work. Kulam mitnabim b'ruach hakodesh. All of them would have ruach hakodesh. Shneimar kol ela banim v'heiman. So Shmuel would have this great school of prophets, and one of them was this guy by the name of Heyman. Anyway. So it says, Amar Efshar Kol HaGedula Azot Atida lamod bimeni v'ani adom. Is it possible that one moment? Sorry about that. So, right, Uta Chazaka, Shishama Mipi, Moshe, Kulam, Ovdim, Achad Nitlam, Vasher Yivchar Hashem Hu HaKadosh. Ta, he made a mistake, Vitala Ba'atzmo, and he basically hurt himself. Below Ra Yacha, he didn't see correctly. Banav Asu Tshuva, his sons would do Tshuva, Moshe Hayaroeh, and Moshe did see that. He knew that that would happen. Again, Tanchuma. That good commentary that Rashi spoke about before. Okay, so now what we have here, is an interesting point. We have that Rashi is explaining why Korach, who is a smart man, could do such a foolish thing. But what Rashi is not asking, and this is worth a little bit of discussion, is what about those 250 men? Were they fools? Were they tipshim? They were also pekichim. They're also smart. What happened here? So to answer the question, we're not the only ones who asked it. Baruch Hashem, the Chatam Sofer in Torah Moshe asks this question, and again he quotes Rashi, and again this is going to be a commentary on Rashi. Rashi Pirei Shekorach Shebikeach Haya Mara'al Sodzeh. What did he see if he was so smart? And then he explained that Rashi explained that Korach saw that in his future descendant would be this great man. So he thought, obviously, it's going to come from me. What he didn't realize, as Rashi explains, was that it's because his sons would do tshuva, and from that tshuva would come Shmuel's greatness. Okay. Ish lefarish Yisrael lo hayu mafsidim shaharei nigzar aleichem b'midbar hazeh. Says the Chatam Sofer, you can't blame the sons of Reuven. I mean, obviously they got punished. They did a sin, and they paid for it. But you have to remember there was a gezerah on them. They knew that they were going to die in the midbar. There was no going to Eretz Yisrael for them. This was going to be it. Within 40 years they were going to die, and that's it. That's not the true. They weren't afraid. But Korach was from the Levim. And so that's why there's a question here of what was the shtut that he saw. He had no problem. He had no gezerah. He could have gone into Eretz Yisrael. And so that's why Rashi has to explain what crazy thing he saw, why he thought that this would be a good argument for himself. The people who were basically dead men walking, they have no other choice. Not that they have no other choice. Obviously, their punishment is great in Gehenna, but they had a lot less to lose. So it wasn't such a giant leap for them to argue against Moshe. They were going to die in the desert anyway. What their future in Shemayim would look like, maybe they thought that was worth a risk. I mean, I think that's also kind of a silly thing for them to do. But in terms of this world, they had very little to lose. They were already on their way out, and this suicide mission of theirs was it was not such a big surprise. They're not considered foolish for that. Korach, on the other hand, that was foolish. Okay, and that's why Rashi had to explain ma ra'a l'shtut zeh. What silliness did he see that caused him to do this? Okay. Our last piece for today is not on Rashi. Look at that. Just to change things up a bit, we'll look at the Meshech Chachma of Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, also known as the Or Sameach, depending on which book of his you're looking at. So he has two names besides his real name, which is Meir Simcha of Dvinsk. He was also called he wrote a great sefer called the Or Sameach, which is his commentary on the Rambam, and he has another sefer, the Meshech Chachma, his commentary on the Torah. So yes, he's known by all of those names. All right, chapter 17, verse 17. Comes the test. Ukhu ish machtato. Each man grabbed his firepan. Untatam alehem ketoret, and he put ketoret on them. He kraftem lifnei Hashem ish machtato, and they placed before Hashem each man his. One second. That's weird. Can you fix it right now? Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. We need to fix something. We can. Oh, we can't. Okay. I'll have to fix it later. It's interesting. It has Hashem's name in it. Usually in Safari you can have them have a substitute name for Hashem. Here it spells it out. I don't know if that's a mistake or what. Anyway, we'll see. Anyway, so again, each man took his firepan, burnt ketoret on that firepan before Hashem. 50 machtot, 250 firepans. Tav Aaron ish machtato. You and Aaron, each man will take his firepan. So I don't know if you noticed, but there's a word that gets repeated over and over and over again in this verse, and that's machtato, his firepan. And the man's going to take his firepan, and they're going to put the Torah on the firepan, and each man's going to grab his firepan. Aaron and Moshe, you and Aaron, each man his firepan. Firepan. Right? What's are we selling firepans here? This sounds like a great name for a store. What's going on? So it says the Meshech Chachma. You have to understand what was happening at the time. He says, Atav Aaron ish machtato. On this verse, it says, the inyan lekol hakelim hayu ta'onim meshicha. Each one of the kelim of the Beit Hamikdash had meshicha, were anointed with oil. V'otam b'meshicha v'lo ledorot b'meshicha. And these ones that were anointed weren't forever. Rak avodatan mikdashtan. They were supposed to be used for a holy purpose. V'im hayu notlin Aaron hamachte shishimesh batamid. But if Aaron would have used the firepan that was anointed to be used in the Beit HaMikdash, as hayu omrim, these other people might say, ki ketoret shelo nit kabla. That's why his ketoret. That's why his ketoret, his incense, was accepted. Was miraculously accepted, not because of him, not because he deserves to be the Kohen, but because he used loaded dice. He used a machta, he used a firepan that was from the Beit HaMikdash. It was holy because of itself, not because of him. Right? Shishimesh batamid. Az hayu omrim, that's what they're going to say. Hoil machta haita nimshichat. It's because he's using an anointed, holy firepan. Moshe ein kein machtot shalahem, but what their firepans? Lachein tziva shiyiku gam Aaron. And that's So that's why Aaron is also commanded, Gam Korach machtato mishelahem. Korach and Aaron and the other 250 men all had to take fire pans that belonged to them. They did not belong to the Beit HaMikdash. She'enam mishal tzibur. They were not from the tzibur. They were not made and anointed with communal funds. Lachein tiyah habchina nitzchit. That has this constant power. Shemachtot shel kulam lo nimshechu. Everybody else's fire pans weren't as holy as the one that Aaron would have used if Aaron would have used the fire pan of the Beit Hamikdash. Filohachi shel Aaron. So therefore Aaron's nitkabel velo shelahem, and that's why Aaron had to take one, just like everybody else had to take machtato, his fire pan. Just like they all had to take their fire pans, Aaron had to take his fire pan as well. Now, it's worth saying that in this parsha that we're dealing with is a major parsha, of course. We have here machloket, and one of the first major machlokets of arguments with Aaron, with Moshe, and somebody else. And we know in Jewish history there have been many arguments since then about rabbinic authority and about all kinds of other things. And we have to keep that in mind, that might be an important theme for this time of the year, especially. Especially as we're entering now Rosh Chodesh Tammuz tonight, and the 17th of Tammuz is just a few weeks away, and it's an important thing to remember that machloket is one of the things that caused the destruction of the Beit Hamikdash, which is one of the things we're mourning, that we don't have that unity that we once had, that we have machloket, and we need to be able to be prepared to fight against it by learning these lessons from the Torah. There are a few other things I just wanted to share from the Gemara in Sanhedrin on Kuf Yud. It talks about how a wise woman builds up her home. What's that talking about? It's talking about On Ben Pelet, who, as I have mentioned before, was one of the people mentioned as being involved in the beginning of the argument with Moshe, and then On Ben Pelet sort of disappears. Part of the reason he disappears is because, as the story goes, as I've said before, his wife said, "What are you going to gain? Korach is going to be in charge, and you'll be a shaved Levi. Moshe's in charge, you'll be a shaved Levi. You're going to be a shaved cue ball of a Levi either way. So what do you care?" So he said, "You're right, but it's too late. I made a commitment. I told the guys I'd go fishing with them, or I told the guys we're going to have this fun machloket with Moshe." So On Ben Pelet's wife said, "No, I'll fix that." So she had him go to sleep, and while he was sleeping, Korach and his men came to go get him for the big test with a machtato, with their fire pans. And On Ben Pelet's wife started washing her hair. She uncovered her hair right outside the tent, and all the men, being religious seeming Jews, they didn't want to see that, at least publicly, and they turned her away and they walked away, and that saved On Ben Pelet's life. Says the Gemara, the opposite was true about Korach. Korach's wife was egging him on, was prodding him and encouraging him to fight against Moshe. She gave him the idea of this the Techelet, for instance, of one of the famous Midrashim talk about how Korach came to Moshe to show how ridiculous halacha is, how ridiculous Torah is, and Korach said, "Moshe, our four-cornered garments, our tzitzit that we just learned about in the last parsha, the end of the last parsha, that needs techelet, right? One string for each of the 8, And Moshe said, of course. He says, what if I wear a garment that's all techelet? Do I still need techelet on the string? So that argument actually comes from Korach's wife, according to the Talmud. And the Sefer Keren Chemed points out that these two things, these two aspects of this discussion is actually involved in certain customs that might be familiar to those of us who go to Jewish weddings. At a Jewish wedding, for instance, when a woman goes under the chuppah, she usually does not have her hair covered yet. It's only after the chuppah or after the next day that she starts covering her hair. One of the reasons, says the Keren Chemed, for this custom of not covering your hair until the next day is because she's saying, I'm like that wife of On ben Pelet. I'm here to help you avoid machloket. I'm here to support you. I'm going to be that loving wife who makes sure that you don't have arguments, not in the house, not outside the house, so you could be blessed with shalom, blessed with peace. And there's also, he says, he adds that there's also a famous custom that the bride to be gives her chatan a gift. There's certain gifts that each one is sort of expected to give according to certain customs in our culture, and one of them is a talit. She's supposed to buy him a new talit, and the reason that she buys him a talit is because of this argument of Korach's wife. That she's saying that I'm not the kind of wife who's going to have you wearing full techelet. You can wear tzitzit. You can wear the proper garment that you're supposed to wear, and that's why that's why women are capable of creating this kind of shalom in the house. It's not just a cute thing to say. It happens to be an interesting halacha. I'll give you an example. Rav Chaim Kanievsky is known to have said that even though usually personal prayers in the Shemona Esrei are not allowed in the first three and the last three of the brachot, only in the middle 13 brachot, the math, right? Middle 13 brachot are you allowed to have personal bakashot, personal requests. You're not supposed to, in Modim, you're not supposed to come up with other things that you're thankful for. In Ritzei, you're not supposed to ask for more things besides the rebuilding of Yerushalayim and the return of the service in the Beit Hamikdash. But in Sim Shalom, says Rav Kanievsky, you can ask for your shidduch, for Hashem to help you find your zivug hagun, to find your proper match. Why in Sim Shalom? Because a man's wife, he says, a man's wife is his source of shalom, as we see. On ben Pelet's wife, and the opposite of Korach's wife. This week's parsha teaches us about the great power that a woman has to create an environment of shalom, an environment of peace, and to bring shalom to her husband and to her family. And especially like I said, in these times, we have to make sure to do everything we can to avoid machloket and to find peace and find peaceful solutions and not have lashon hara and all kinds of other types of strife that have been separating the Jewish people for so long and keeping us from seeing Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mheira v'meinu, as we should see soon. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining the class, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.